time now to go out to the left coast of the United States of America and check in with Michael Snyder, who, as usual, has some movie reviews for you. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Hi, Alex. How are you doing?
I'm okay.
Well, it's the future's already here, apparently, and certainly at the movies, we have the sequel to Blade Runner. This is Blade Runner 2049. Blade Runner, the movie, released in 1982 and based on Philip K. Dick's novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, is one of the most influential science fiction films in the history of movies, insofar as it pioneered the look of what is a now familiar urban future dystopia. Movies that followed it, like Dark City, Ghost in the Shell recently, Strange Days, even the animated adaptation of the Japanese comic book Akira, which came out in 1988, they're all heavily influenced by Blade Runner. And the sequel, which is set 30 years after the events in the first movie, is flat out dazzling and gets its greatest emotional wallop from the main holdover from the original film, Harrison Ford's character, Rick Deckard. And we already know that Ford is back in this movie, and there are a couple other significant characters that may or may not show up in the sequel. But let's get clear on this. With his star billing, it's no surprise that he's going to show up opposite the younger lead performer in the movie, Ryan Gosling, who plays LAPD Officer K, a Blade Runner like Deckard. Now, what's a Blade Runner? It's a cop tasked with chasing down and eliminating rogue replicants. These are artificial humans created as a slave labor force in the future. But at this juncture in the future, only a handful of these replicants with free will still exist because they've been banned, and a new breed of obedient replicant is being produced by a conglomerate run by an evil megalomaniac played by noted portrayer of loonies Jared Leto. Or is that Leto? Anyway, under the command of actress Robin Wright's character, a no-nonsense cop named Lieutenant Joshi of the LAPD, Kay is trying to unravel a mystery that may change society for good, but forces are arrayed against him. To say much more about this would be to spoil the fun. It's a long film. It's a powerful film. It's directed by the French-Canadian director Denis Villeneuve, the guy who did Arrival and a handful of other wonderful films. I kind of liked Arrival better in so far as emotional content, but man, does this look good, and it just sails along, and it totally follows in line with the previous film. And how ahead of its time was the first Blade Runner? They don't tweak much in terms of what we see on the big screen. They elaborate a little bit on it. The holograms that come off of advertisements in the middle of the dark and rainy future Los Angeles are a little more elaborate. And we have companions that are basically holographic, one of which is played very well, I might add, by Ana de Armas, a young actress who makes serious impact here. There's also an assistant to this megalomaniac, played by the Dutch actress Sylvia Hux, who is really pretty much a standout here. There are a lot of really powerful moments in this, and it does recapture the magic of the first film and take things a step further. I recommend this new version of Blade Runner, this sequel, this extension of the story, Blade Runner 2049, to anyone who loves sci-fi. And, maybe it's not as great as you might think, but I thought it was pretty potent. Moving along, something with less impact and more impressive actors, because I'm a little burned out on Ryan Gosling after the whole La La Land thing. I'll be honest with you. It was a stretch for me to swing with this movie because of that. But you've got actors that kind of leave him in the dust. Kate Winslet and Idris Elba in what is essentially a new genre, the action soap opera. Two strangers are stranded after a very harrowing plane crash in this movie, and they have to kind of connect in order to survive in this horrible snow-covered wilderness, this mountain area where no cell phones work. The plane is a wreck, and so they have to band together and somehow get back to civilization if possible. It seems hopeless, and yet somehow they plow forward. Like I said, action soap opera, directed by Hani Abu Assad, I had a hard time buying into it. It seems silly at times, and yet you're carried forward by the actors. I guess this is the weirdest date movie of all time. You may have your companion gripping your hand in fright or excitement or maybe emotional distress. Again, not a great film, I don't think, but The Mountain Between Us certainly does trundle along. Unfortunately, it kind of crashes about 2/3 of the way through, just like the plane in the movie. Here's my big pick out of nowhere for the weekend. Brawl in Cell Block 99. In this action movie, a former boxer turned drug runner ends up in prison after this deal he gets involved with goes south. It stars Vince Vaughn, and man, I was totally impressed by his performance in this thing. It's a super dark, full-on symphony of violence when circumstances find this guy Bradley thrust into this dangerous alliance that leads to him getting what would be a manageable sentence in a conventional prison, but outside forces land him in the worst jail in recorded history, with Don Johnson looking a little withered and wizened as his sadistic warden and the guards and most, if not all, of the prisoners against him. Rather than back down for his own safety and comfort, this guy Bradley keeps ratcheting up the violence and sinking himself deeper and deeper into what is essentially a no-return situation. It starts out like film noir or an Elmore Leonard crime tale about a tough guy with a marriage on the rocks and a shady past trying to straighten out and get by in an honest fashion. But it turns into this ultra-violent homage to grindhouse movies of the 70s that maybe Quentin Tarantino wishes he made. Vaughn, with like a shaved head and a mega buff body, is almost unrecognizable as the glib jackass he often plays. Instead, here he's like totally committed and awesome in a role maybe you'd expect Bruce Willis or Jason Statham to play. In short, this brawl really knocked me out. It rocked, it rolled, it pulled no punches. It's a little grisly for general audiences, but right in my sweet and sour spot. I like the director's previous work. S. Craig Zoller is the guy's name. He wrote and directed this. Bone Tomahawk was his previous film, which was a Western with a cannibal threat. And I'm glad he's still in, pardon the expression, take no prisoners mode with Brawl in Cell Block 99. It may not be to everyone's taste, but I loved it. Overdrive is a thriller about two car thieves who are brothers and who journey to the south of France for new opportunities and wind up in the crosshairs of the local crime boss. This European-made attempt to start a new fast car and faster bad boys franchise, like the Fast and the Furious movies, has a lot of energy and twists and turns and stunts, but the motivations of its characters seem whimsical, and its lead actors are no Oscar contenders, even if the nominal male lead is Scott Eastwood, and Eastwood's dad is well acquainted with the prized golden statuette. The son has the squint, but not the depth of the old man. And his cohorts, other than his girlfriend in the movie, are pretty unmemorable. And oddly enough, the girl is played by Ana de Armas, who makes such a good impression in Blade Runner, and here she's sort of decorative at best. Despite it being directed by the same guy who directed Taken, it's got none of that film's punch and gravitas, meaning this one doesn't star the great Liam Neeson, nor have an interesting premise or the sort of high stakes that are generated by parental love in the Taken movie. Instead, it's like one of those Luc Besson-produced transporter films without the verve and punch or a real believable tough guy. Yeah, Overdrive was not too impressive. Just quickly, to wrap things up, I want to give a big thumbs up to Faces, Places, which is a documentary with the great French director Agnes Varda in her sunset years, touring through rural France with a younger man, a photographer muralist named JR, and they form this friendship along the way. They create these bonds while they do all sorts of interesting art installations and shoot the results. It's kind of charming and whimsical and heartfelt and informal, and I guess it's what so-called reality TV should be, time spent with interesting, creative people instead of with dunderheads that make you roll your eyes. Faces, Places, very, very cool. What are you watching? What are you up to, buddy?
Well, all I got to say is that the two sci-fi franchises that are on right now that I've come to like, the Orville, which I think is really, it's a great, it's the best Star Trek done since, Deep Space Nine. in its own way. I mean, it has all the feel of a Star Trek. It has the comedy of Seth MacFarlane. It really works all of a sudden. The first episode sucked, but it has I've warmed to it. And the other, of course, is Star Trek Discovery, which finally this week showed where it's going, and it's going to a very interesting place that I think is unlike any other Star Trek series before it. So I think there are two things to watch. Gotham, as usual, is just a delight to watch. Why do you not
on board with Gotham? I also have to say, I'm watching the Orville, but I really think it still doesn't gel. The comedy and this homage to Star Trek doesn't gel for me. But I will agree with you that Discovery looks like it has massive potential, and I'm excited about where it's going.
Yeah. So that's about it. I don't know of anything else that is floating my boat. I have one little guilty pleasure, and that's the Mick.
Someone else recommended it because they say Caitlin Olsen is very funny and very over the top.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Did you bother watching the other the new network Marvel shows, The Inhumans?
Oh, it was ghastly.
Yeah, terrible.
Just
absolutely
horrible.
Terrible.
In fact, they've already canceled it.
I'm not surprised.
Well, I mean, not for this year, but they've canceled any future orders for next year.
Yeah, I heard that was the case. I have not watched The Gifted, which is another Marvel-inspired show. But I will say that I'm glad to have Curb Your Enthusiasm back.
Yes, of course, we all do. Anyway, that's kind of it. Tell them where they can find you, Michael.
On Twitter, I'm at Culture Blaster. And on Facebook, you can find me at Michael Snyder's Culture Blast and check into our audio discussions and articles and stuff.
And, of course, you can hear him here online all weekend long, over and over again, as GABNet continues. Thank you, Michael.